I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
Just when it seemed like the tension between Prince Harry, Meghan, and the royal family was finally fading.
And a guy named Jeff Rayner, who spoke to me and said, "I can change your image," he said.
A fresh storm has hit. Reports now claim that King Charles has signed off on a rule that removes Meghan's children from the royal line of succession.
This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point, but I've got to do something for my own mental health, for my wife's, and for Archie's as well, because I could see where this was headed.
But it's not just the news that's causing shockwaves. It's how Meghan responded that has left many speechless. Their reaction, unexpected, has raised even more questions than the action itself. Why did King Charles take this step now? What led to such a bold move? Join us as we uncover why King Charles took Meghan's kids off the line of succession. Real reason. King Charles removed Meghan's kids from the line of succession. King Charles' decision to remove Prince Harry and Meghan's children from the line of succession has stirred public interest, especially after reports claimed the king had made several attempts to see his grandchildren.
And I think a lot of that gets lost in what can be super dehumanizing when you look at the clickbait culture. And
according to a palace insider, those efforts were rejected by Meghan, who reportedly still feels the royal family hasn't treated them fairly. Both Harry and Meghan are said to be upset by the move. The announcement came as a surprise, not just to them, but also to many who believed the rift between the couple and the royal family was beginning to heal. But in the midst of this tense atmosphere, one question keeps coming up. Can King Charles really remove Meghan's kids from the line of succession? The idea seems strange, and many doubt that any monarch has such power. Stay with us, because we are about to reveal what many didn't know about UK royal succession. To understand whether a king can simply remove someone from the line of succession, it helps to look back at how the royal line even took shape in the first place. The early English monarchy was not built on written rules. It came from tradition, family ties, and whatever arrangement kept the kingdom steady at the time. Kings were followed by their closest relatives, and people accepted it because it avoided chaos. Back then, the idea of a king personally choosing who stayed or left the line wasn't even discussed. Succession worked because it followed bloodlines, not personal orders. As time passed, England experienced political conflicts that forced Parliament to step in and create clearer rules. What started as a hereditary tradition gradually shifted into a system watched closely by lawmakers. Parliament wanted stability, especially after years of tension over religion and power. That pressure pushed the country toward written laws that formally controlled who could inherit the crown. This slow shift surprised many people of that period because it changed how they understood royal authority. What once felt like a natural family order was now becoming a legal matter. One of the biggest turning points came in 1689 with the Bill of Rights. It was designed to settle major disputes, but it also created the first firm legal rules on succession. It named who would take the throne, and also limited the rights of anyone who was Catholic. This was new. For the first time, Parliament was openly shaping the line of succession through law. By doing this, lawmakers made it clear that the crown could no longer control its own future. Succession was no longer just about blood. It became something Parliament had the final word on. This new control grew even stronger a few years later. In 1701, the Act of Settlement stepped in and tightened the rules around succession even more. It stated that only Protestant heirs could inherit the throne. It also placed limits on the monarch's authority, which pushed the monarchy further under Parliament's supervision. After this law was passed, the idea of a king removing someone from the line became almost impossible. The power simply did not belong to the monarch anymore. Parliament had built a system that made succession a matter of national law, not royal choice. These rules got in place for centuries, untouched but closely followed. But in the 2000s, public attitudes began to evolve, and Parliament decided the old rules no longer reflected modern society. That brought an unexpected development. It led to the Succession to the Crown Act of 2013, which brought several important changes. One of the biggest was the end of male preference primogeniture. Under the old rule, a younger son could skip ahead of an older daughter. The new law removed that. Birth order now matters more than gender. The 2013 Act also changed the rule that once barred anyone who married a Catholic from inheriting the throne. This rule had pushed several heirs aside in past centuries. With the new law, marrying a Catholic no longer forces someone out of the line of succession. At the same time, the law replaced the Royal Marriages Act of 1772, which once made marriages invalid unless the sovereign approved them. That old law created real problems in the past because children from such marriages were considered illegitimate and therefore unable to inherit the crown. With the 2013 Act, Parliament removed that risk entirely. Looking back even further, one of the strongest examples of how removal from the succession works came in 1936. When Edward VIII chose to give up the throne, he could not simply walk away. Parliament had to pass the Abdication Act to make it official. That law also removed his future children from the line. This remains one of the clearest proofs that only Parliament, not the monarch, can take someone out of succession. Even Edward VIII himself could not influence his own position without Parliament's involvement. The pattern stays the same each time the question comes up. Any changes to succession require a legal process, not a royal command. On top of that, because the British monarch is shared with several Commonwealth countries, those nations have to agree as well. Laws in places like Canada and Australia must be the same with changes made in the United Kingdom. This adds another layer of protection that prevents any one person, including the king, from changing the succession line. Even though kings and queens cannot change who inherits the crown, they do have some authority in other areas. They can issue documents called letters patent, which allow them to change someone's title, style, or honor. They can decide who is called prince or princess, or who uses the style of His Royal Highness. But these changes do not touch succession. A title is not the same as a legal right to inherit. A person may lose their style or honor and still remain firmly in the line. The law makes a clear separation between personal rank and constitutional inheritance. This explains why modern succession is almost entirely controlled by statute. Everything rests on laws such as the Bill of Rights, the Act of Settlement, and the Succession to the Crown Act 2013. These statutes create the rules, and no individual monarch has the authority to override them. The king cannot decide on his own to remove anyone, no matter the situation or public pressure. The law has locked this system in place to avoid abuse and maintain stability, especially in times of political tension or family disputes. History supports this again and again. No monarch in modern times has ever removed anyone from the succession, even in moments where the royal family faced public backlash, the line remained untouched. The monarch can influence public perception, but not legal inheritance rights. Only Parliament can make a change, and Parliament does not act on personal disagreements inside the royal household. A clear example of this is Prince Andrew. Even though he lost his military titles and the style of his Royal Highness, he was not removed from the line of succession. His place remains exactly where it sat before his public controversies began. This proves that titles may change, but succession rights stay the same unless Parliament decides otherwise. The monarchy cannot use personal authority to rearrange the future of the crown. The same rules apply when people ask whether King Charles could remove the children of Prince Harry from the line. The answer is simple and rooted in law. He cannot. No matter how strained relationships might be, and no matter how widely the media speculates, the king has no legal authority to erase anyone's position in the succession. Only Parliament, along with agreement from Commonwealth realms, could do such a thing. And historically, Parliament has acted only in extreme cases, not private family disagreements. When the full story is told, everything points in the same direction. The monarchy may look like a powerful institution, but its future is controlled by law, not personal will. The line of succession is protected by centuries of decisions designed to prevent instability or sudden changes driven by private conflicts. A king can change how someone is addressed. He can limit their public duties. He can remove their titles. But what he cannot do is remove their legal right to inherit the crown. Succession stands exactly where Parliament has placed it, and the monarchy has learned to operate within those limits. But even though Meghan's children cannot be taken out of the line of succession, their issues with the royal family are still affecting them in other ways. Let's find out how. What Prince Harry and Meghan's split from the royals means for them. When Prince Harry and Meghan announced in January 2020 that they would step back from senior royal duties, the impact was immediate. The decision meant they would no longer function like William or the other working royals who perform public duties on behalf of the monarchy.
40 friends to donate 40 minutes of their time to help mentor a woman who's mobilizing back into the workforce.
From that moment, their role changed into something completely different from the structure they had been part of since their marriage. They stated they would work toward financial independence, and the palace reshaped its expectations around them to reflect that new position. Every part of their royal identity was adjusted to fit the reality that they were no longer frontline representatives of the crown. As soon as it became clear in early 2021 that they would not return to their former roles, Buckingham Palace confirmed that several patronages and honorary positions tied to them would be returned. These responsibilities were then shared to working royals who could carry them out in an official capacity. Some of these roles had deep ties to charities, cultural bodies, and military groups that depended on the visibility a working royal provides. By relinquishing them, the couple stepped away from the institutional network that once linked them to major public-facing organizations. Part of the transition involved no longer being allowed to use the style Her Royal Highness in an official sense. They retained their titles, but the palace made it clear that the style could not be used in any working context. It placed a boundary around how they presented themselves publicly, especially at events where protocol matters. The change did not remove their identities as Duke and Duchess, but redefined how those titles functioned when they were no longer active representatives of the sovereign. Financially, stepping back changed everything. They no longer received support from the sovereign grant or funding through the Duchy of Cornwall for public duties. Historically, Harry's royal work had been supported through these channels. Once those resources ended, they were responsible for creating their own income, which led to the commercial projects that followed: streaming deals, speaking engagements, publishing ventures, and business partnerships. But that is not all. Security became one of the biggest turning points in Prince Harry and Meghan's break from royal life. And it didn't just happen overnight. The issue started back in 2020, when the couple officially stepped down as senior working royals and moved to the United States. With that decision, they now lost the taxpayer-funded security protection that comes with being active members of the royal family. At first, many assumed they would quietly make their own arrangements, but the matter quickly grew complicated, especially when Harry returned to the UK. Prince Harry argued that even as a non-working royal, he and his family still faced serious security threats. He said he offered to pay for police protection while in the UK, but the Home Office rejected that request. In response, Harry took legal action not just once, but multiple times. The first major legal case challenged the decision to deny him automatic police protection when visiting. He wanted a judicial review of how those decisions were made. The High Court ruled against him, saying the decision was not unlawful or irrational. The court acknowledged Harry's concerns, but maintained that the government had the right to set its security policies. Another case involved whether Harry could pay out of pocket for specialist UK police protection. Again, that request was denied. Officials argued that public police officers are not for hire, even if someone is willing to pay. Prince Harry also launched multiple lawsuits against some of the UK's biggest media houses. His claims involved serious allegations: phone tapping, unlawful data gathering, and years of privacy violations. He accused tabloids of using illegal methods to dig into his private life, even as far back as when he was a teenager. These cases weren't small. They stretched over months and even years, cost millions in legal fees, and forced Harry to appear in court, something very rare for a royal. One major case was against the publishers of the Daily Mirror, where Harry became the first senior royal in over a century to take the witness stand in open court. That alone made history. Some of his claims were successful. In certain rulings, the courts agreed that Harry's privacy had been violated. Damages were awarded, and media houses were held accountable. But the legal battles also opened the couple up to fresh media scrutiny and criticism, as every court appearance and filing became a new story. For Meghan, one of the most high-profile cases involved the Mail on Sunday, which published parts of a private letter she wrote to her estranged father. The court sided with her, calling it a clear breach of privacy. These lawsuits marked a sharp break from the royal family's usual way of handling the press. Meanwhile, honorary military appointments that once connected Harry to ceremonial roles within the armed forces were returned. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped back from their roles as senior working members of the British royal family, one of the most talked about changes involved Harry's connection to the military. For years, he had held honorary military appointments that tied him to ceremonial roles within the armed forces. These roles were more than titles. They involved representing regiments and serving as a symbolic link between the monarchy and Britain's military institutions. But as part of the transition out of official royal duties, those honorary positions were formally returned to the crown and reassigned to other working members of the royal family. However, this did not erase Harry's actual military service. The decade he spent in uniform and his active deployments remain part of his personal history. All these things happened because Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal life. But the big question remains: what really caused the fight between Harry and the royal family? Keep watching. The story we're about to tell will surprise you. The real reason Prince Harry left the royal family. Long before the wedding planning began, there were already reservations inside the royal household about Harry's relationship with Meghan. Senior figures had spent decades watching royal marriages unfold under strict traditions, and they saw how quickly this relationship had moved from introductions to serious commitment. The concerns weren't voiced through dramatic objections, but through the familiar caution that often shaped internal discussions about new partners entering the family. Meghan had a professional background in entertainment, had been previously married, and had lived most of her life outside the circles that usually surrounded the royals. These details made the institution attentive in a way that signaled early hesitation. As soon as Meghan became publicly known as Harry's partner, the media attention intensified instantly. Royal advisors took note of how quickly the news cycle turned toward her, especially since she was already familiar to the public. They anticipated that her visibility would bring a different kind of coverage than what the family was used to managing. That prediction proved accurate when tabloids began analyzing every part of her background. Some of the earliest problems began with the way the press covered Meghan. Many of the first articles carried racial undertones that had not been used against previous royal partners. This shift was noticed quickly, and it became one of the first warning signs that the relationship between Meghan and the institution would not be typical. Harry reacted with unusual speed. He released a public statement asking the press to stop the racial and sexist coverage. For a royal, especially someone not yet married, doing this so early was almost unheard of. The problem was that while Harry saw the situation as urgent, the palace responded with its usual slow, traditional process. This mismatch in response created the first crack between Harry and the monarch. Once Meghan officially joined the royal family, the internal issues started to become clearer. Reports later revealed disagreements between Meghan and some palace employees. Staff said her expectations were high. Meghan believed she was asking for normal accountability. Internal complaints were filed, and details of those complaints reached the press. This was the moment the conflict widened. But that was just the beginning. Even more drama unfolded afterward. Things got worse before the wedding. Meghan's father started doing interviews and sharing private messages.
And a guy named Jeffrey who spoke to me and said, "I can change your image," he said.
His actions created headlines the palace could not control, and each day brought a new problem. What should have stayed quiet became a long-running story in the press because details kept leaking. All of this added to the stress and made the family look divided. Later, another major issue came up. Meghan and Harry said that someone in the family had asked questions about how dark their son Archie's skin might be. This changed everything. It turned the conflict from a simple problem with the press to a serious accusation of racism inside the family. It also showed how alone the couple felt, because they believed the palace should have stepped in to stop the unfair treatment long before things reached this level. In the end, the conflict happened because Harry and Meghan felt unprotected and exposed to unfair treatment. Given all of these issues, many have long speculated that Harry might one day lose his royal titles. But can a prince actually be stripped of his titles over family conflict? The answer might surprise you. Stay tuned. What will make Harry lose his royal title? Under the British royal system, titles are not mere names. They reflect status, duty, and heritage. A prince is often a direct descendant of the monarch, usually a son or grandson. The title shows both bloodline and seniority in the royal family. A duke, on the other hand, is a noble rank that can be granted to royals or non-royals. While all dukes are nobles, not all are royal. Royal dukedoms like Duke of Sussex are typically given by the monarch to male descendants on special occasions, such as marriage. HRH stands for His or Her Royal Highness. It's a style that adds further status and privileges, often signaling that the person is an active working royal. This style is used before a title, like HRH Prince William. Not every royal-born individual receives or keeps the HRH style, depending on their role and relationship with the monarch. However, these titles and styles are not automatically passed down or permanent. They are granted by the reigning monarch and can be changed or taken away under certain conditions. A royal may hold a title by birth, but only the monarch can give or remove the HRH style or any dukedom. Titles carry expectations, and the monarch uses them to show favor, assign duties, or maintain the dignity of the crown. For example, Prince Harry was given the title Duke of Sussex by Queen Elizabeth II in 2018 after his marriage. This was a sign of trust and recognition. However, the power to remove that same title lies with the monarch, or, in some cases, with Parliament, if the situation requires legal backing. Also, there is a big difference between stepping back from royal duties and abdicating a royal role. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, for example, stepped back from their official duties in early 2020. They did not renounce their titles or leave the royal family by blood. They simply chose not to represent the crown publicly. This was a voluntary decision agreed upon with Queen Elizabeth II. On the other hand, abdicating is a formal and irreversible act, like what King Edward VIII did in 1936. He gave up the throne entirely and was no longer king. Abdication is rare and carries far more consequences, including changes to succession. Stepping back may involve reduced visibility or responsibilities, but abdication removes one's position entirely. The case of King Edward shows how serious abdication can be. He was the eldest son of King George V and became king in January 1936, but by December of that same year, he gave up the crown to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. The British government and church opposed the marriage, and Edward chose love over duty. After his abdication, he was given the title Duke of Windsor by his brother, King George VI. However, Edward lost the title His Majesty and became a royal duke, no longer a sovereign. It didn't end here. There is more to the story. Wallis, though married to a former king, was never granted the style Her Royal Highness. This was a deliberate decision by the royal family to set boundaries on their standing. Another example involves Princess Diana. After her divorce from Prince Charles in 1996, she lost the Her Royal Highness style. She became Diana, Princess of Wales, but was no longer Her Royal Highness. The decision came from Queen Elizabeth and was backed by the terms of the divorce. While Diana remained the mother of future King Prince William and stayed popular with the public, she was no longer officially considered a working royal. Losing Her Royal Highness meant she had to curtsy to those who still held the style, including her former husband and even her sons in formal settings. But when it comes to who holds the authority to grant or remove royal titles, the monarch is the central figure. Titles like Prince, Duke, and Her Royal Highness or His Royal Highness are part of the crown's gift. The monarch can grant these titles at their discretion. However, if the title is part of the peerage, like a dukedom, removing it may require formal legal steps. Parliament may need to pass an act to legally strip someone of a peerage. The House of Lords has a limited role, unless specific law is involved. So, while the king has the personal and official power to give or take away royal titles and honors, removing peerage titles involves legal steps and must follow certain laws. An important law for this is the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. Passed during World War I, it allowed the British government to remove titles from those who had sided with enemy nations. Several members of the royal family who held German titles lost their British honors because they fought against Britain. One good example is the Duke of Albany and the Duke of Cumberland, who lost their peerages under this act. The law still exists today, but has rarely been used since then. Title removal laws were meant for extreme cases like treason or aiding enemies in wartime. So far, no modern royal has lost titles for simply stepping back or facing scandal. But the law still allows it if national loyalty is in question. Here is the twist. In today's monarchy, no prince has been stripped of a title just for leaving public duties. Prince Harry still holds the Duke of Sussex title and is technically still a prince. He no longer uses His Royal Highness in official settings, but it wasn't taken. He chose not to use it with the Queen's agreement. Even Prince Andrew, after serious legal issues and public pressure, lost military roles and patronages, but kept his Duke of York title. This shows stepping back doesn't automatically mean losing titles unless stronger action is taken. King Charles has the power to remove Harry's titles, but it comes with risk. Politically, it could split public opinion and look like harsh punishment. It might also worsen family tensions. Unless Harry crosses a more serious line, Charles may avoid that move. Do you think the king can remove Meghan's kids from line of succession? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also, click on the next video on your screen. You won't want to miss it.